sick video, dude. I want to share it with you.
What's that video
I'm
about?
screen recording. It's about the thief on the cross. I really like it.
That's cool. All right, hey, welcome Facebook, YouTube, video consumers. We are here. This is the CapmLew podcast pre-game.
It's the pre-glow.
For what it's worth, and this is on you.
This is on you. Remember that, folks.
Remember that. Yeah, we were just talking about current events. Messy time in American history.
Yes.
There's, oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like we're perched on the edge of becoming the Glenn Beck show.
No. we're on the event horizon.
It could happen, and not the Glenn Beck show, but it could happen. I don't listen to the Glenn Beck show very much. There's my mic. It's way too flipping close to my, yep.
I don't think so.
It's on and it's connected. Close, right? It's close. It's going to be warm. All right, we're gonna start the podcast.
Go ahead.
There we go. All right, welcome to the CapmLew podcast. For what it's worth, I'm your host, CapmLew.
Yes.
And we got
Luke here. Sorry, I'm screen recording something for Lew because he doesn't get on Tik-Tok or InstaSlam.
I do get on Tik-Tok.
Oh yeah, but not InstaSlam.
Speaking of which, this is the week during which the Congress has been displaying their mental acuity in regard to what they called a TikTok ban.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, what was it, yesterday? The day before, there was a terrible school shooting in Nashville, Tennessee.
I watched did you watch the cam video?
I actually did watch the video. I watched the security cam footage of the entry of the subject into the school property. I watched that, and at that point, I realized that I couldn't bear to watch much more. Not right now.
Yeah.
Not a good day. Not a good time for me. So, did you watch the body cam footage?
I watched the body cam footage of two cops. It was
I don't need to see that.
Seriously not fun to watch. It's absolutely brutal.
Well,
I mean, it's not super gory or anything. It's just really, really sad. It's heartbreaking.
Well, there's some very harsh realities at work among us. Some very high consequence, long-term high consequence things going on. A society doesn't get to behave the way that this society has without these things eventually coming to roost.
Yeah.
We are looking at the symptoms of fundamental depravity in a society that we don't have a high capacity to look at that, and people just aren't recognizing that it doesn't matter where you are politically. What we're looking at is degrees of fundamental deep depravity that are desperate, and the remedies. The TV is trying to sell us political remedies, but that's just people getting power. That's mostly what they call in the biz demagoguery.
Yeah.
People who are they're gonna take everything from you, promising you safety and security, and both sides of the same bird are gonna flap the same way. Right. They're gonna take everything from you. In fact, you can see it. You can see the same people that are like pro-gun and all that are trying to save you from, I guess, TikTok, and then you start reading that bill. You start reading the actual content of that legislation, and it's reprehensibly totalitarian and repressive. That piece of legislation, I mean, believe me, it's always in good fashion to hate on TikTok for being garbage. But it has become where people are getting their news and where people are sharing ideas and things like that.
Yeah.
And, oh man, babies, bathwaters, they're all being thrown out.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the Second Amendment. Understanding the Declaration of Independence and the Second Amendment, and seeing that this sets America apart from every European country in some fundamental ways, because it reserves unto the population the capacity for regulating the central government, so the central government can't take away freedoms. But no, this is a people who crave to trade their freedoms for a false sense of security. And the bitter pill that there is no safety There is no security. Life is risky and dangerous and savage and super high consequence. And one of the worst things that we can do is invest too much in what we've come to call safety.
Yeah.
Yammering on about how something is dangerous and destroying things like free speech and destroying things like diversity of opinion. And, you know, because if you attack, you can attack bad ideas with good ideas, but you can't attack having bad ideas. Because people have to be able to be wrong in order to discover what's right.
Yeah.
And if you take away people's right to be wrong, you take away the ability for society to learn the deeper things. I mean, there are smarter people who've said it better, but fuck them.
Oh my gosh, dude. Oh my gosh, dude. Oh my gosh. I was actually thinking about that in conjunction with the quote-unquote cancel culture that people like to talk about, because to some degree, I personally find that cancel culture is a manifestation of the First Amendment right. The problem is we quickly move into this zone wherein, you know, quote-unquote cancel culture begins to impede people's ability to speak freely, because now there is one set opinion based on some sort of like,
oh my gosh,
like really wishy-washy, ethereal, moral high ground, you know.
Let me say something.
Go ahead.
The guy who fixes my car,
yeah,
I don't want him to lose his job because he has bad politics.
That's true.
Now, if he fixes my car and he comes out and he's trying to move on me politically with bad politics, I might take my business elsewhere. But if he just gets backed into a corner and he's like, says something that's you know, not, oh my gosh, becoming an ASE certified technician and working for years in the grease and the heat and the heavy lifting of being a mechanic.
Yeah.
Why do we expect these people to be sociologists and political science majors and I guess gender studies majors and things like that?
Right.
Oh, for criminy sake, if a guy comes out and it's like, there's a newspaper article that says, oh, thus and so AMCO transmission specialist, he's got politically bad views.
Right.
Yeah, because maybe the man is real studied in transmissions, but he's not real studied in political science, and maybe we is that really news?
It is if your ideology is based on some sort of moral high ground. You know, like this. There's like a wave of postmodernism that.
Yeah, well, clean your room.
Yeah, I know. Clean your room.
Oh, you want to change the world?
Yeah, clean your room.
Great.
No, I agree.
Great. Then start with you.
Right.
Start with and absolutely. You know what? This immediately slides off into a whole bunch of lengthy stuff, but it's not. It doesn't have to be so lengthy.
Yeah.
Don't judge other people so much.
Yeah.
Like. And, you know, I'm sitting here and I'm watching, like, the United States Congress, and they're all about TikTok, okay?
Yeah, right.
Which, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if there were some sinister elements to social media companies, okay?
Well, yeah.
But they should have done Facebook and Twitter first.
Did they not, dude?
Well, I'll tell you what, they're roasting Matt Taibbi. The IRS just visited Matt Taibbi in an obvious political intimidation.
Really?
Yes, because he's been publishing articles out of the Twitter file, it's interesting because it's an expose of paid cooperation between the intelligence agencies of the United States government and the former heads of Twitter. And what that means is everything that they did is liable to the charge of election tampering and all manner of stuff, because the FBI and the DOJ are not allowed to be in an information war against one candidate or for another. Yeah, They are not supposed to be partisan in their politics. No matter how awful a candidate is. I mean, oi, 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 you've got such a mess there.
What was the Department of Government that was in contact with the heads of Twitter?
FBI.
Oh my gosh,
they were paying them.
No!
Well,
don't do that.
Well, It's absolutely nuts what's being exposed there. So, oh, great, Matt Taibbi, he's testifying before Congress, and the IRS visited him.
Ah, crazy.
At his door.
These coincidences.
You know, I got audited 2 years in a row. We thought it would go 3 to 5 years because I had a small business, and they love to audit. And I had people in the industry who loved to report people.
Jeez.
They reported me to the cops and accused me of selling boards at skate parks. They wanted to put me on every radar they could. It was, and admitted it to my face.
Yeah.
That's so funny because when I got surrounded by all those guys and that big assault happened,
yes,
they made up a story that I'd been smacked in the face.
Yeah.
And they made up a story that I was a snitch at the same time. And they're the same group of people who were just fine.
Yeah.
Like filing an anonymous report to the IRS or filing a report with the Delhi police that you were selling at a park, which we weren't.
Yeah, right.
And on. These people's hypocrisy knows no bound.
Yeah.
And you were saying the same in the political. It's all human nature.
Yeah.
It's all just human nature playing out.
100%.
And it feels like we're on the edge of some heavy. And I'll tell you, we started on a path in the late 60s. We started on a path when we started listening to people like Margaret Sanger. And we began embracing eugenics. We began embracing postmodernism. Foucault and Money and Kinsey. These are all names you all should know.
Yeah.
These are the sources of the bedrock of the way that you've been taught to think. If you're under 35, 40 years old, you've been taught by Money and Kinsey and Foucault and Sanger. You've been taught by these people how to think about so many things. Your teachers, my high school teachers in the 80s were fervent disciples of postmodernity and relative morality and all these things. And now, trust me, I don't want to go back to the 60s or the 50s or the 40s because those were the era of Jim Crow.
Yeah, I'm not down for that.
I mean, I'm not saying that America was all that great.
No. Yeah.
But these ideas that presently are very mainstream are actually they promise progress. Yeah. But they are regressive. Yeah. Demonstrably regressive. And what's interesting about it is turning back to the ancient ways and looking to the stone from which we were hewn, looking to the Almighty, cracking the big book, not the Alcoholics Anonymous big book, but the Bible, cracking that thing and digging around in there and checking for resonance. Yeah, you're not gonna hurt yourself.
Yeah, I mean, even if you don't come out as a person who believes in an almighty creator, I mean, even just to look at it as a piece of history, you know, well evidenced, one of the best historical documents that we have, I think the best historical document we have from this era, even as just a study of sociology or, you know, as a religious study, it would be a good practice.
Even if you just want to have a smart mind and understand the fundamental underpinnings of the society that we live in, I'm going to say behooves.
Yeah, go ahead, dude. I like that word.
I don't like saying behooves.
Why? Because it sounds like butt or something?
You know what I like? I like saying erstwhile.
Erstwhile.
Also, I like saying notwithstanding.
Notwithstanding?
Yeah.
Or betwixt.
Also, betwixt is a little highbrow.
It's a little highbrow.
There's another one. Appearances notwithstanding. That's one of my favorites. Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm actually a project manager and the production manager of the company. Yeah. Appearances notwithstanding. Yeah, I like saying that to people.
I keep on telling my bosses at work that I'm a PM of the people. I'm like Robin Hood because I wear like hoodies and double knees and like used Vans, and they're like, you should really be more professional. I was like, I'm of the people.
Would it kill you? Would it kill you to wear a proper pair of work boots? Are you wearing work boots today?
No.
No.
They're in my truck though.
I wear work boots to work.
They hurt my feet. My
bunion. That's not good. The
my
bunion. Dude, my bro.
I know.
I might have a bunion brace I can lend to you.
Sick. I've been doing those exercises. Anyway, it's fine.
Yeah. I have bunions, but they don't hurt.
That's sick. I'm really happy.
I'm really grateful that my bunions don't hurt. Get the king toe. You get the king toe of the Red Wings,
much like the King Ranch. Yes.
I'm about to buy some more boots, but yeah, this big stuff is really happening. It's happening very fast, and people are not well paced to it.
Yeah.
We've been touching on similar dynamics in our discussions around skateboarding, its industry, its culture, because skateboarding's culture is a humanities culture.
Yeah.
We are, as skateboarders, we are members of a coalescence of hedonists. We've gathered around the cult of playing with the toy.
Yeah.
And we've made it we are the children of those who made it serious. And who failed really to make as much money as they could have at so many points. They're all about money. They're willing to market at the cost of human lives, maintaining cultural status quo through media and all of the Luciferian and drug-addled garbage that's pushed in skateboarding. They're willing to market on that. And at the same time, for decades, those same people were perfectly willing to push 50% of the population right out. Girls, gone.
You're done.
No problem. Right. So for money's sake, they wouldn't stand up to the things, the ideas that killed our friends. And then against a financial interest, they wouldn't embrace doubling their market by embracing females. They finally got around that. Then they pretended that they were never homophobic.
We've never done that.
They did. They're presently pretending that skateboarding was never homophobic.
Sure.
Ridiculous. I can't believe. Like, I'm sorry, guys. It's tough on my neck. Gave me whiplash by acting like skateboarding was so accepting, right? But that's fine. I prefer the acceptance that's in skateboarding now to the way it was before.
Yeah.
Once again, attribution to mostly Instagram.
Sure.
But now it looks like the narrow bandwidth of safety and social justice is taking hold in skateboarding to where now skateboarding seems like it's getting political, and it's trying to eat the bread. It's trying to butter the bread just on the one side of whatever the politics are, when it should be saying, screw politics, let's skate.
Yeah, I know.
You know, it doesn't matter where you're at politically. We're playing with wooden toys. Finally, but it looks like that's a thing now. I'm noticing that actually distros and brands are marketing on ideologies. I got accused of being an ideologue one time.
Oh, that's horrible.
I did.
How could you?
I did. Well, a writer for the Ride channel.
No.
Yeah, he put me on blast for being an ideologue because I was asserting that all this brand bullying was complete garbage. And then I thought, something's wrong when being called an ideologue is like an argument.
Yeah, you have
because
ideas.
Because everyone operates by ideas.
Right.
So anyone who has integrity with a set of ideas is an ideologue.
Crazy dog.
Anyone who puts words to ideas, because ideologue comes from the word idea.
Yeah.
And logos, which means words.
Yeah.
Words about ideas. So anyone who's talking about ideas is by active participation an ideologue.
Yeah.
So how does calling someone an ideologue be some sort of nail in the coffin?
Sure.
And, ghost and disappeared. Thanks be for things like, by the way, this new Senate bill, I don't know what bill it is, but this TikTok ban is going to make every single home Wi-Fi network, LAN, everything is going to be open territory for the government to see what you're doing. And if any of it connects to enemy states, and they have a list of them that can change at any time.
Okay.
If anything you do in the past,
Yeah.
present, they can go back. They can say, these guys are now enemies of the state. Oh, you were on their site doing this. And I'm like, oh, it's like, I'm going back to pen and paper. Instead of texting my friends, I'm just going to write down ideas I had for them and hand it to them.
And hand it to them. Yeah.
And then they can write down responses to my ideas. They can hand it back to me in a week and just slow everything down.
Right.
But it looks bad.
I saw one of those little tiny like first gen brick Nokia cell phones. Somebody was selling on Facebook Marketplace for like $25.
I wish it would work.
Well, dude, I just had this. He was like, I just replaced the battery. I was like, dude.
Do they work?
I'm going to get one of those.
They don't work.
And I'm going to turn off my phone because I need a smartphone for work. I'm going to just turn it off when I leave work. And I'm just going to have this Nokia phone, and just slow it all way down. Like,
do they work?
I'm sure they do. They probably work amazing. Our friend has a flip phone. He uses it every single day. It's the most, honestly, if you think about it, if you slow it down for a second, this guy has a flip phone. That means he can't listen to any music. He doesn't have access to any like Google Maps or anything. When he goes on a trip, he literally prints out, or he's a savant, so he just memorizes the route. He has no idea what the weather's going to be like. And we had this big conversation about it because I was like, you're the only person in my friend group I know who does this. And it's fascinating because his argument is so solid. He was like, yeah, if I want to know what the weather is, I just look outside. It's amazing. It's incredible.
I have
honestly.
to say, specifically on the weather issue.
Yeah.
You're talking to a guy who, as a motorcycler.
Oh, it's helpful.
The radar app.
Right.
I don't prefer riding in water. There are issues of traction.
Right.
There are issues of visibility
that
directly play into. I'm not going to use the word safety. They play into. I'm going to instead categorize it under dangerability.
Dangerability, which is a better word.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand.
The danger, because since everyone says, instead of saying the comfort of this thing, they say the comfortability.
Oh my gosh.
Now, what is going on?
Yeah, stop.
There's a movie, an old movie called Idiocracy that's just coming true. Yeah. Like the cops are like the individual. They use it. Oh, this individual. Like it's there. Like comfortability is not a word. Up is not a verb. Nuclear is not a word. And all the way up to the president. And
right.
I think that I definitely am not welcome at a lot of tables just by dint.
By dint?
By dint.
It behooves us to understand what the word dint means.
Yes, it does behoove us. Just because I like to learn the words for things. I don't even read that much, bro.
Yeah.
I don't even read that much.
I think you're used to a lot, though.
I did. I used to read 5 books at a time.
Wow, dude.
I'd have 5 books going at a time, and I'd be polishing them off.
Yeah,
but
it's been dumb things.
It's been like 15 years since I was an avid reader.
Yeah.
And I read all day, but now I consume my media mostly in the form of short form video and longer form video. I don't listen to 3-hour podcasts. I listen to clips.
Yeah, you're a clipaholic, man.
About 15 minutes is as long a thing as I want to listen to.
I like listening to a whole deal. I like starting something and finishing it. It just feels good, man.
Well, I don't sit in one place for very long. That's my work. Lie. Like when I'm on a
well, when you're on a job.
When I'm on a job, I'm mostly just listening to one Coulter Wall album
over and over and over.
I'm learning it.
So good, dude.
I'm learning it.
Yes.
I want to be able to play it.
Dude, me too.
Yeah.
100%. I was just thinking about that because I've listened to a lot of like sermons or debates on YouTube, like to and from work, or when I'm working out, or like when I'm working, if I can ever get a chance, where 800 people are not asking me different questions that all require 25% of my brain space. I'll throw on my headphones and just listen to something. And it's funny because the work that I do, I can actually do while consuming to something and actually listening, because this is actually fascinating. I'm using the like part of my brain that sees shapes to do my work, even when I read words. Now, if I have to type an email, I have to stop listening. But if I can read and I can do my work just doing it by shapes, and then I'm listening to the verbal audio and I can consume it. And you can listen to a lot of stuff, dude. Yeah. Like it's a really effective way to learn and listen and take. But there's a huge trade-off, I think, as well. And I don't know necessarily. I have yet, in this particular moment, I can't identify what the trade-off is, but I know that they're there. You know, it's
reading is hard. I'm older. I'm 50 this May.
Old as dirt.
Oh no, not even near.
Like new dirt.
I've only been around a little while, but 50 is a fairly large number of years. You're 2/3 through it. 75 is a reasonable. The life expectancy has dropped like 5 years.
Yeah, I think that's because of COVID, though.
No.
Oh,
I keep getting inundated with information from actual clinicians. You know, I like during COVID, I was such an idiot because I kept getting my information. I would actually go on the CDC and the Mayo Clinic, and I would read the charts like an idiot.
Look at the data.
I would read and look at the data, and then I would think, okay, so out of 350 million Americans, okay, now let's divide it by age. How about age bracket? Oh, by age bracket, this is really different.
Yeah. Right.
I thought, oh, okay, well, how different is it? Oh, who's it different for?
Yeah.
Oh, so how would you approach that? And blah, blah, blah. So I was a complete idiot and a traitor and a terrible citizen.
You might as well have been on January 6th, dog. Yeah, what's wrong with you?
Oh, that whole thing. Oh, my gosh, dude. The further it goes, what are we? Has it been, how many years has it been?
Dude, like two or something?
There are people who were jailed on misdemeanor charges.
Who are still being held.
And there are even people who haven't been charged who are being held.
Yikes.
Still.
Yikes.
And I'm like, what? Okay, that's bad.
Yeah.
We have citizenship, due process. We have human rights. Yeah. We have rights that are not granted by government.
Yeah.
They are recognized by our government, and they're just being completely trampled. I don't care. Charge them. Try them. We have a right. Which amendment is it? 4th or 14th? We have a right to a speedy trial.
Let me look.
We have a right to a speedy trial in the United States. And if they can't give you a speedy trial, then they should drop the charges in America. Like, that's Constitution, like 101. People don't even know this stuff. This is bad.
That's the 6th Amendment.
Thank you, Luke.
The rights of criminal defendants, including the rights to a public trial without unnecessary delay, the right to a lawyer, etc. That's the Miranda rights type deal, probably based upon the 6th Amendment. That's kind of amazing, man.
I think the Miranda rights might be based in the 4th Amendment. Okay. I only know the 4th Amendment, so I know the 1st Amendment and the 2nd Amendment. The 3rd Amendment, I don't know. I think it's not widely applicable. Are we going to do a whole series on these things?
That would be fun. That would actually be really fun. The Miranda rights, the U.S. constitutional basis for them are in the 5th Amendment and the 6th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The 5th Amendment dealing with a person's right against self-incrimination.
Oh, yeah, not incriminating myself.
Yes, and
I have the right to remain silent.
Yes, which is crazy.
What's the 3rd Amendment?
Let me look, dude. Here, let's just do this.
We know the First Amendment is a statement of rights recognized as having been given by the Creator, by people who weren't Christians.
Yes.
These guys were not Christians. They were deists. They were Masons. But they were men of some degree of reverence. Reverence is a very important, not just American, but it's a very important human virtue. I think that this might be one of the casualties of this false enlightenment toward post-modernity, post-modernism that we are in since the 60s under Foucault and Money and Kinsey and Sanger, that we have lost a sense of reverence for several areas of mystery. One area of mystery is matrimony.
Yeah.
Monogamous matrimony as an institution proceeds from a sense of reverence for the importance of procreation, family, someone being there for you when you're a baby, all the way until you're a grown-up. And then you being there for someone all the way till they're a grown-up. And then you being there for someone when they are old and dying. Changing those diapers when people are born and changing the diapers of the people who born you. There's a reverence for that. It's an institution that virtuous people should hold in great respect, because the consequences of the degradation of that institution are long-term disastrous, and we're in that disaster right now. We're touching on aspects of it. We're seeing it in this. There are people who are willing to talk about fatherlessness, and we're willing to talk about deaths of despair. There was a whole documentary on deaths of despair.
Oh, interesting.
It's unseen. Drug overdoses are now way up at the top of the cause of death in America.
That sucks.
Second cause of death, I think, this week.
Wow.
Yeah, the stats are astounding on drug overdose. And those are deaths of despair that are linked to lack of... And we also have lost reverence. Another crucial, not the only... These aren't the only two, but another crucial aspect of life for which we've lost the virtue of reverence is life itself. We have a cultural shift toward, I'll just say, death.
Okay.
You can see this shift in the reproductive rights movement.
Yeah, sure.
Rooted in a good movement, which was the feminist movement of the early feminist movement, that women should be full citizens.
Yeah.
You know, all
right
this.
Right. Yeah,
that's a good thing, I think.
Sure.
There are arguments to be had, some very interesting arguments to be had, not anti-feminist arguments, but arguments about limiting principles in these movements. Are there limiting principles? At what point does feminism become anti-matrimonial? Does it become what's the word for the hatred of men?
That's going to bother me.
Yes, misogyny and misandry.
Is that what it is?
Misandry, yes.
Misandry is the hatred.
Yeah, misandry is, I think, one way it's said. We can say it however we want to. Nobody's going to go nuclear on us.
Nuclear.
Or up our stress levels about
Up our stress levels as a verb. Up our stress levels, yes.
But vocabulary and pronunciation notwithstanding, it behooves us. To consider the virtue of reverence in regard to matrimony, in regard to family, reverence for motherhood, reverence for homemaking. Now, it sounds like I'm going to hashtag trad wife this whole thing.
Trad life, right?
I'm not sure that fits with a proper Sigma male grind set.
Oh my gosh, dude. It's a Sigma male grind set, dog.
It's not.
No.
It's not.
No, it's not.
But these values are seen as traditional values, and I don't think that the word traditional ought to be automatically a pejorative term.
Absolutely.
That's not a bad word. That's not a just because something's traditional doesn't make it bad.
Sure.
But there are some traditions that need to be modified.
Yeah.
Some need to be abandoned.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And every generation needs to assess how, like, I'm glad that we don't have arranged marriages in the United States.
Absolutely.
But whether marriages are arranged or not, what there ought to be is there ought to be strong resistance to abusiveness in marriage.
Yeah.
Women and men abuse each other in marriage, and that it would be great if it never happened again. It won't never happen again until Shiloh returns, until the end of the age. But while we are strapped with having been born without being asked beforehand.
Nobody asked my opinion.
Nobody asked my opinion, to my recollection, whether I wanted to be born. Some people believe that you get to choose to be born or not.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't go in. I don't even know what to think about this. I'm a simple man. I'm a simple man.
Right.
I just want to buy more buck knives.
Where have all the normal people been? Which amendment did you want to know? Is it
the third?
No soldier shall in time of peace
quartering
be in the house.
Quartering. That's the one that I knew was not really the funny thing about the Quartering Act is it establishes the boundary of a home as sacrosanct against federal encroachment.
Sure.
That Quartering Act. Read the whole amendment. Sorry about that.
Here we go. No, you're good. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. So,
and
kind of leave it
that,
open, right?
No, that doesn't, because that law has to pass through that democratic portion of our constitutional republic, which is the legislature.
Yeah.
So because a law has to be passed, it means that all of our representatives have to be their necks on the chopping block at election time if they tick off the electorate.
Yeah, sure.
By deciding on quartering.
Right.
How about these?
Bro.
Throwing knives.
So sick. Can you use them?
SOG throwing knives. SOG, SOG.
SOG.
These are throwable, but I won't. I'm not going to throw them. They're too shiny.
You're gonna poke your eye out.
I'm not that guy.
They're sick though, dude.
I'm not that guy.
There was a time when I was like probably 13 or 14. Somebody got me some throwing knives, and I was like trying to learn how to use them. There's 3 of them.
There's 3 of them.
Dude, I play Call of Duty. Those things are sick.
They all come in this one sheath with 3 slots.
Just in case.
My kids got me these for Christmas. I think not last year, but the year before. And I've got these. I would never throw. I don't have any confidence that they would work.
I mean, even if you hit somebody with the back of it or the side of it, it would probably hurt.
I would annoy them to death.
Yeah, you would annoy them.
Ow!
Stop, bro.
Stop!
I'm trying to have a gunfight here.
That hurt!
Oh my gosh, dude. That is
I'm
hilarious.
not gonna throw a knife.
Let me see one of them bad.
Here, bud. See all 3?
They don't even have. Yeah, there's no help.
They're wrapped. They've got a handle on them.
Look at the way they beveled the tip. That's actually kind of sick.
The tip has got an extra angle on it for
that's actually cool.
Extra piercingness.
If we were bachelors, we would throw them against the wall right now. Yes.
My dear wife.
Hashtag not worth it.
Well, I mean, I have to re-drywall the whole wall downstairs because for like a summer, me and my kids threw throwing stars in the drywall in the meeting room.
So sick. Oh, I know of it.
And then we had airsoft bullets everywhere because we just airsoft battled.
She would like go on a trip for work and she'd come back and there was just airsoft.
And dude, you know what?
Yeah.
She was cool.
Yeah, dude. That's because your lady was sick, dude.
She's a good one.
That's so funny. I remember like 2 weeks ago or a month ago, I was like, you've told me that story before, and I was like, dude, you remember when I first lived here, the airsoft bullets, it was probably 10 years in the past then, and I was like, they were everywhere still. And they've kind of like begun to disappear because of vacuuming and sweeping. And like a month ago, I was like, you remember when we used to find those everywhere? And I just looked down and there was one, dude.
That was like 2007 through 2009.
The glory
we were
days.
doing that. They were good years.
That's so funny.
It was when I was taking like 3 trips a winter down south to just ride skateboards and Market Craft made skateboards to skate shops. It was still skate shops back then.
Right.
No, actually, I didn't produce my first craft-made skateboards until late 2010. That was in 2007 through 9, and then I made skateboards, and then I was making from 2012 through 2015, I guess, 3 years. I made 25 trips in 4 years.
Yeah.
I think.
Sure.
Maybe. No, because I took my first trip to Savannah in 2008.
Savannah.
Yeah, I did. I took my first trip down there in 2008.
Bro, that was so long ago.
I did.
12 years, 15 years ago.
Joe B, he put me up. He hospitalized me.
He hospitalized
Hospitalized. He hospitalized me.
Right.
I didn't stay in touch with Joe. He's a good guy, sweet guy, and we had a rider down there named
Quentin.
Oh my gosh.
Larry. I'm just gonna name off names until you say yes.
He was a bull rider, a Georgia bull rider guy. good dude.
Randy.
Sweet guy now.
Roy.
It's so sad. I'm sorry I don't remember your names, guys. It's been so long, and I moved into different zones of attention. That's just a fact.
Different zones of attention.
It happens. I'm a heartless man, I think.
Oh my gosh, dude.
It's fine.
So heartless.
Y'all can say what you need to.
Aw.
I'm worse than that.
Yeah, if you only knew.
Yeah,
if you only knew. That's so funny.
Remember up here when they accused me of being a Christian, and I was like, I wish.
Yeah, I wish. Please let it be true.
Yeah, so
yeah, go ahead.
So we've got these amendments of the Constitution. We've got a Declaration of Independence that really, really establishes a lot of good thinking.
Yeah.
We've got Federalist Papers that were written in correspondence form, debating highly centralized government form that we wound up settling with, whether to have a federal government at all.
Oh, sure, right.
Yeah. Or just to have decentralized state governments.
Yeah, which would have been interesting.
Would have been a disaster, by my opinion. I tend to agree with, I don't know, I don't know, was it John Adams? Alexander Hamilton?
I thought it was Hamilton versus, and he was writing to Thomas Paine or something.
Jefferson?
I don't know.
I can't remember,
Jefferson
dude.
was he was a land surveyor, yeah, I know.
We suck.
I know, dude. I know.
We're the worst. Hey, remember, dear listener,
this is on you.
This is on you, but this was also brought to you by Life Skateboards. They're the skateboards we ride. And it turns out Life Skateboards has been ponying up and helping to support the podcast. We are stunned at having an actual podcast sponsor in Life Skateboards. We would have done this for free.
Yes.
The boards are not only good enough to ride, they are, I really like them.
Good enough to buy, even.
I really like them.
Yeah.
They are expensive.
Well, good.
It's $100 a plank.
Dude, I don't know. I think he's probably charging the right price. Come on, dude.
I think that having made skateboards myself for so long, by the way, I charged $95 shipped.
That was before the pandemic.
And that was before all of the pandemic stuff. But I know they're shipping out at about $125. I know they did have one customer who got real persnickety in the last few months. But I beg to differ with this customer's perspective, and I'm not afraid to say so publicly. I would love to take on that actual thread if we could sanitize it.
I know.
And actually bring that thread into light.
Yeah. I feel maybe bad. I don't know.
Oh, I don't.
You don't want to put the guy on blast or anything. I know.
No, not at all. No, but the ideas. I'd like to. We could rephrase it, and we could bring the structure. It was a great discussion.
Yeah.
And Sam at Life Skateboards is not going to do everything perfectly. It's not like everything about that discussion was like done exactly the way that I think it ought to be done.
Yeah.
It turns out the way I think things ought to be done isn't the only way that they're going to get done.
Insane.
And when you've got someone who's getting it done at all, that's remarkable.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah. So Life Skateboards makes killer decks. I've got two of mine over here. Plus, I've got no, those are both, this one's an old Fickle board. The one behind it is a Life prototype that we made, I shaped the aggro. Yes. And then up here you've got, that's my favorite board up there. I've got one of them set up here with nary a scratch on it almost.
Nary a scratch.
I don't know, I think I've got one session on this board.
I was thinking about our last podcast, you were talking about always having extra gear, and it was so funny because dude, just being with you so long now, like, you're just always the guy with the stuff. You got like extras of everything. It's badass. I'm very similar. Like my truck is full of tools and all kinds of stuff. And you almost never need them until you do, and then you're so happy you have them.
Oh my gosh.
You're so happy you have them.
You break down in the jack.
Stop.
The jack that's for your truck is like not working. I got a tire blowout on the highway.
Yeah.
I pulled off. And the jack that came with that was a Ford. Mm-hmm. And I was lifting up the truck. Yeah. And the jack just bent.
Bro.
It was just...
You're like, no.
It was an expedition. It was too heavy for the jack that came with it. Jack was too light for the expedition.
Just wasn't going to do it, yeah.
That was the worst. And I had to wait for a tow.
Yeah.
Instead of putting the spare on.
And you're like so close. Yeah, so far. Dude, I think I have enough stuff in my truck right now. I could pull my transmission completely out of my truck and out and be done. Yeah. You know, like.
I have enough tools in my truck to perform all the basic services on a Harley Davidson and more.
And more.
I think I could do a top end with the tools in my truck.
Yeah.
I do. think I could do a top end rebuild with just what I put in my truck.
It's so funny, like how that it translates to, like, you know, your attitudes when you were a kid, but it also kind of morphs, you know, like it makes me so happy. That kind of stuff makes me really happy. You feel really secure. Maybe it's just because life's been hard, you know.
Dude, you know how I've been having such a hard time with this Suburban?
Yeah, I do.
I've been having trouble with the transmission.
Yeah.
You know, the torque converter is a heavy-duty torque converter. It's not behaving right. The fluid is cooked, but not brown. Yeah. It lost its red. It's not brown yet, but it's cooking. Yeah. Smells cooked. Yesterday I was driving it for work, doing roofs with a Suburban. Yeah. Not terrible, but not great because I can't get sheet lumber. Yeah. But yesterday's roof was stick lumber. Stick lumber I can do up to 12 footers. What? Yeah. If I do diagonal from all the way in the front back to all the way in the front,
that's sick.
8 foot fits easy, 10 foot fits easy. I can put 10 foot in straight on the passenger side.
Yes, you can.
Up to it doesn't even reach the windshield.
That's
10
amazing,
foot sticks.
Dude. So sick.
So I'm like, I got this great vehicle that works with stick lumber, not sheet. Yep. And then I have another great vehicle that the company is buying. It's already set aside. It's a great truck. It is. And looks like in April that I'll get a hold on that. And when that lands, I'm going to take but I was at Home Depot yesterday, and a young man was pushing all the carts and stuff. He was doing grunt labor. Yeah. And I saw him while I was in there getting mortar repair. Okay. For sealing the chimney flashing. Yes. And I got out in the parking lot. He says, "Excuse me, sir." He says, "I love your Suburban." He's like, all of them I see are all rusted out, but yours is in great shape. Because mine was kept in Texas. Yes. It's a 2-owner previous.
We should be fluid filming it. Go ahead.
And so I cried.
You cried?
I didn't cry, but I was like,
touched,
you know,
deeply touched.
Yeah, maybe it'll be worth it to keep this thing going.
100%.
Also, I checked my oil the other day.
Yeah.
That oil ain't low.
It's fine.
That thing's not using oil. It does not have a head gasket leak.
No.
And
I don't think the tick is from the motor.
No, it sounds like it's in some bearing on something in my serpentine. Got a new alternator. Doesn't have they didn't replace the water pump. I told him to replace the water pump.
Like, I'll pay you money,
I told him when they were replacing the radiator and the transmission after it was a mixer, I said, replace the water pump. I'll pay. I even had one. Sure. And they didn't do it. I can't believe they didn't do that. Now when it's time for a water pump, I'm going to have to do it bent over but at least it's on the front. It's an old GM and it's on the front. There's room.
It's fine, dude. It's fine. That stuff's fine.
I have an extra radiator for it too. I actually do.
When I pulled off my timing cover piece on my truck, the what do you even call it? The spindle. That's not the spindle. It's the actual fan blade that the water pump uses to push water. There's a name for it, like a turbine, essentially, type deal. Yes. I could see where it had been rubbing against the front of the cover.
So it's missing a spacer.
Yeah.
It's missing a spacer.
And I'm going to tell you what I did, and I don't stand by this, but I just put it back in. That was so broken, dude.
Because it had lapped in.
Yeah, it's fine.
It had lapped in for a superior fit.
Yes, it was self-seating. Right.
That's
I was fine with it. It's self-seated, and I'm not bothered by it.
No, it arrived at spec.
Yeah, it's fine. It arrived at spec.
Through a process of custom lapping, it machined itself.
Yeah, it was like
into
AI.
Spec.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was beautiful.
The key is it was rubbing. It was also self-lubricating because all of that pulverized metal serves as like a graphite style lubricant.
Exactly, dude. Exactly. I'm so glad we're on the same page.
Follow me for more recipes. You know,
it would be amazing to have a TikTok channel and all your automotive. It was an automotive advice, but it's all like the worst advice.
It'd be called Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So we've got we've got some heavy thinking to do in terms of being people. Things are out of control. We've had the last like 4. It used to think like when there was a school shooting, you'd think, oh, this is rednecks. This is like like Call of Duty kids, which that doesn't actually pan out.
Yeah.
I noticed that they've said that doesn't pan out. I haven't gone on the Mayo Clinic website yet. But I'm not ever going to do my own research again because it got me like canceled from my own family. Like, where does your loyalty lie? Do what your overlords tell you.
Yes, right.
And
take the Soma.
I couldn't believe how many punk rock people were so down to take the Soma.
Yeah, I know.
I couldn't believe it. All these people who like supposed to be independent thinkers and stuff were just like, wow. I would never do what CNN or Fox News tell me to do without first soaking up a bunch of information.
Yeah.
Well,
it turns out it's a tremendous amount of work, and the cost that must be paid is very, very high sometimes. I mean, the movies, Hollywood lied, they really glorify this these heroes, and it's for a reason. It's because we are really enamored with the hero's journey. And it's good. It's
but
right.
We're supposed to be living it ourselves.
Yeah, but everybody thinks Frodo is sick and Sam is sick for walking to Mordor, but ain't nobody want to be sitting in some cave eating lamb bread with a guy who's going to stab you in the back in the end. You know what I mean? And in the end, Frodo was totally going to take the ring. He totally was going to pocket that shit and move on with his life. You know what I mean? This is us, baby. Ain't
so funny.
Just no heroes. So tremendously difficult.
I think that it's time in our journey of a podcast to address a kind of thinking.
Yeah.
This kind of thinking, we've been dancing around the edges of this, and I've never called it this out loud. But the kind of thinking, it's hard for people to hear this because this word doesn't necessarily, but it's institutionalized thinking.
Okay.
All right.
I thought you used moist or something.
No.
It's moist thinking.
It's actually low humidity thinking.
It's low humidity.
Institutionalized thinking is that kind of thinking where a person passively participates in a thought construct that they've acquired through just completely external. It's just been pressed on them by their environment.
Right.
Without questioning the actual nuts and bolts and mechanics of how life goes. Now, the problem with non-institutional thinking is it's dangerous.
Yeah.
It is dangerous. It's a higher danger type of life. Like, imagine a guy, in farming, who comes up with a great invention, and he loses an entire crop year because it had a flaw. And it ruins him, and you're talking about starving in the winter. That's a non-institutional thinker. He doesn't just do it the way it's always been done.
Right.
He does it a new way, trying to do. And the guys who've done almost all of the great inventions have been non-institutional thinkers.
Yeah.
And almost all of them drank the bitter cup of failure. And many people died unknown, failures lifelong, and others picked up where they left off and made amazing things.
Right.
And so institutional thinking is safe. It's warm. It's familiar. You're used to the smell, but it's like a bathtub full of feces.
Yeah.
You've got
You've
got to there's a degree to which people will and won't, should and shouldn't appropriate their worldview for themselves. Rumspringa.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult because I think that in order to be a non-institutionalized thinker, you have to have a base to come off of. You have to have a worldview and a moral framework. And I think that's a tremendously difficult task to figure out. Well, what do I believe, and what is right and wrong in my mind?
Let's readdress that.
Go ahead.
I like it, but let's talk about something. Everyone has a moral framework. Everyone has a worldview. But the thing you just said was, it takes a lot of work to figure out what mine even is,
exactly.
much less
right.
improve it, develop it.
I
think developing is maybe a better way to say it than improving, because so much of, like, many people shy away from being learners.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
That is a point of contention. I contend to my generation that we ought to be learners.
Yeah.
But the problem with being a learner, for example, we just went through the pandemic, which, thanks be to God, was not the killing flu that it could have been. I'm so grateful for that.
Me too. Me too.
It was devastating among the elderly. Devastating.
Absolutely.
Especially when they were grouped together and put together by the government into facilities where the sick were housed with the well. That was an on-purpose thing. It caused at least 18,000 deaths just in New York.
Yeah.
That was a terrible mistake.
Sure.
Largely brought upon us by politicians that we wished we could have trusted, right?
Sure.
The pandemic was interesting because during the pandemic, we saw the vilification of people who were saying, stop, wait, let's think about this, let's get more data.
Yeah.
And I understand the reasons they were vilified was they were held up as if they were in the way of progress or in the way of,
sure,
and we had spokespeople on the TV telling us that they were terrible people, even though they were the most credible sources in that field.
Right.
Their testimony before Congress was removed from YouTube, and anyone who shared it or anything got their social media shut down.
Literally, yeah.
And that to me, that was to me, when, as I'm a person, when I see that happening, I immediately think, oh, I want to know what those guys had to say.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that the powers that be are automatically reliable just because they're powerful.
Or automatically benevolent, yeah.
Sure. Right. I mean, even if they are benevolent, I mean, maybe they mean well. Well, maybe people who mean well make terrible mistakes.
Absolutely.
Look at the people who meant well that released that powdered radioactive stuff over Philadelphia neighborhoods back in the day. Remember that experiment? I'm sure they meant well by peppering the ghetto with, like, plutonium. Remember that?
I've heard about that.
That's real.
Yeah, it sucks.
Or on purpose. They were all very helpful and really had good intentions when they were on purpose giving poor communities syphilis, trying to find a cure for syphilis. I mean, that was all well-intentioned, but in retrospect, I find some flaws in those approaches.
Yeah.
It's the same government that did stuff like that.
Right.
I mean, it's not like they were taking blankets that were infected with smallpox and giving them to people who had never built an immunity to it. I mean, it's that they would never do that. That's not the way that government behaved just a few years before they did the powdered radioactive over Philadelphia experiment.
Because that would be completely egregious in every way.
Right. I mean, the same benevolent government dropped a bomb on a Philadelphia row house because black people were arming themselves against opposition, against oppression. Right. Right. And it was the NRA got created because the the government was trying to outlaw guns from the Black Panthers, which was a benevolent disposition.
100%.
Protecting all of us. So since having an institutional power, always produces safe, effective things that prevent transmission and reduce death, and since that's always the case, and we could know that beforehand, right? It's an act of social treason, dissent, diversity of opinion, diversity of learning process that nobody has time for. And I was heartbroken to find out that Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo they lost all respect for me because I was interested in more data, and I was interested in the data of the people who up to that point had been the experts, but now they were kicked out of everywhere. That made me want to learn more. So I started learning more, and I took into consideration the statistical analysis of my actual risk and began learning more. And of course, I was greatly confused and led into all manner of error by my own doctor and other terrible sources that confirmed, and I lost out on an opportunity to join many of my friends who had neurological and cardiac issues after they followed the route that was safe and effective and prevented transmission and lessened symptoms and lowered death rates.
Yes.
And that's just one arena in which non-institutional thinking. Now, here's the problem. I could have been dead wrong.
Yeah, sure.
And I could have died.
Yeah.
And I knew that then. Sure. I knew that I'm probably wrong, but I just don't do things because I'm told to.
Right.
Without first learning more about it.
Yeah, sure.
I want to learn a lot.
Right.
I probably did a full college semester or a full college year worth of reading, listening, comparing, and discussion about these things.
Sure.
It was for real.
No, for sure.
Because it's important.
Yeah.
It's really important. It's your health.
Yeah. Right.
People don't act like that.
No.
And I found myself like, because I approach my life this way, I find myself consistently less welcomed in many circles. And that's sad, because I see tremendous value in learning from people, especially people who don't agree with me. But I despair a lot of times that I will be able to have a productive discussion when people are saying that people like me should be eliminated, or that they hope that we die, or like that.
Right.
And I get called anti this, I get called anti that, when I want to explore. I don't think I can know.
Yeah.
I just want to exercise my right to explore things and decide for myself.
Right.
Whether to do something or not do something.
Yeah.
And it looks like we're speeding toward that not being a mainstream sentiment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. I've said this multiple times, but I'm going to say it again. I am empathetic towards people who find this to be tremendously difficult, because I find it to be tremendously difficult.
It is.
Because even inside of the conversation revolving around COVID, I was struggling to find any information that I felt didn't completely contradict the thing I just saw, and I felt to be actually reliable. And I probably listened to 60 hours worth of material of people talking about this on both sides, trying to figure out what the crap is going on. And that was over the course of probably a year. So to really have the amount of time that it would take to have a complex and nuanced take on these things, it's broaches upon the impossible, especially for people who have full-time jobs and spouses and kids and all that jazz, which is the reason that we're supposed to have experts who help us understand these things. But I mean, especially revolving in the pandemic conversation, you had experts on either side who were saying almost completely contradictory things based upon the same set of evidences. You know what I mean?
You know what that drove me to do? I said, okay. Well, one thing I did was I went in the CDC information and I looked at everything that had been said about coronaviruses up to that point. And I learned from Dr. Fauci that if you've had a disease, your natural immunity is typically superior to a vaccine.
Sure, which makes sense.
This has been, and then I confirmed with my doctor and through other medical professionals who I know, and through sources like, I watched as Dr. Malone and Dr. McCullough were erased, but they were the foremost. Now, Malone is an RNA guy, so when the vaccine came around, Malone got railroaded. I watched as the head of the CDC stepped down the former CDC director
Mm-hmm.
came forward and said, this is not the way vaccines work. So I was coming in with some knowledge.
Yeah.
And I watched as also I saw flip-flopping happening in the public advice, and I realized we were being handled
Sure.
as a people.
Yeah.
It appeared at one point that they just didn't want people to buy all the masks. And then
Yeah.
I thought, okay, well, they're handling us, so
Right.
I want to get information beyond handling. So when I saw contradictory perspectives, like I knew people who were like super anti whatever they were saying to do. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like that either.
Yeah, no, me neither.
I want information, not positions. I don't want to be. See, that's institutionalized thinking. Is you take you're spoon fed some position, and then you
Right.
identify yourself by that position, and it gives way to tribal divisions
Yeah, right.
between people.
Right.
But non-institutional thinking, a person who is really appropriating a topic for themselves, they'll find it very difficult to be tribally identified.
Right.
They'll be like, well, they're a mess. I'm a mess.
Right.
Because the reality of it is I don't really feel that I have like a really great position on any of this stuff.
Right. Which I think is a manifestation of being a person who actually is interested in information and in what I would call the truth, because very often the truth is way more nuanced and way more complicated than anybody would ever want to imagine it to be, especially when it comes to very like high level medical advice.
Oh, yeah.
And things. Like you have to
it's
understand
humbling.
how does even a gene work? You know what I mean? How does the body's immune system work? It's been 15 years since I was in elementary school when we went over this.
I knew about lymphocytes,
Yeah,
right? I
sure.
knew about lymphocytes. I knew about T lymphocytes.
Yeah.
But I didn't know about B cells.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about that your body produces antibodies. I knew that.
Right.
But I didn't know that after your body is done with that infection, it
Right.
stops producing the antibodies and stores the vocabulary of that immunity
Mm-hmm.
in your bone marrow and
Yeah.
probably somewhere else.
Right.
In these B cells, and there's another kind of cell. And I learned about this. I was like, oh, so my body can get a disease, and then it remembers that disease, but it does more than remember the disease. It also understands diseases like that one. So it'll
Very cool.
draw on 2 or 3 different
Sure.
experiences that it's had,
Right.
and go, well, let's throw these 2 at it. We can knock it out 60%, and then the lymphocytes can gobble it up. And
Right.
I don't know, but the big gobbler, after the antibodies break the thing and drag it down, and the big gobblers come out and they
Yeah.
gobble it up, and that's
Right.
what pus is made of, is
Yeah.
dead big gobblers. Once they
Dead
gobble it,
big gobblers. Yeah.
yeah, they're
Sure.
white blood cells.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why pus is that tan color,
Yeah.
or
Ugh.
pink, or whatever you got going on.
See a
Get that.
doctor.
You should get that looked at.
See a doctor, my
Really,
friend.
that looks bad.
Yeah. See a dermatologist, my dude.
Yeah. Well, let me know if it has red streaks headed toward your core. All right.
Yeah.
So,
Mayday.
because that's So
I mean,
so I was like,
yeah.
I learned. I was brushing up on my high school understanding in my college classes I took on biology.
Yeah.
And I was learning that like reliably, and I caught the thing right away. I was sick in March of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I was.
Did you take a positive test? I
They
know.
didn't
we
even
don't even
have
to.
them.
We don't
They didn't even
to.
have them,
Yeah,
but it was
right.
obvious that
Yeah.
that's what it was.
Right.
2 ways. The first reason it was obvious was because it fit the symptom profile perfectly.
Yeah.
All right. The second reason that I know that it was
Mm-hmm.
is because subsequent to that first infection,
Mm-hmm.
I was helping people who had COVID directly
Yeah.
in contact with them.
Yeah.
I counted 8 times in the next 6 to 9 months
Sure.
where I was obviously in the room in close contact with COVID sufferers.
Yeah.
And I suffered no ill effects at all. And that is a field test for immunity.
Yeah.
So, medicine is not just double-blind trials.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Real medicine is done in the
yes.
field. And that's the other thing I
Yeah.
saw right away. All of a sudden, the field of medicine in America,
Right.
instead of a risk-benefit analysis, they were like, everything has to be double-blind trials,
Right.
peer-reviewed. Well, peer review is a very long process, and that's not how real medicine works. If they take a heart medicine and it works to make sure you can reproduce well. They're going to give it to you to reproduce well, and that's how we got Viagra, you know.
Yeah.
And
right.
And that's what do they call off-label.
Sure.
Prescribing off-label
right.
has always been done in the risk-benefit analysis that
right.
the front line doctor or the family doctor and you know what? That's not allowed anymore.
Yeah,
that's why you had chloroquine drugs and you had ivermectin and you had these other drugs, and ivermectin is demonstrably one of the safest drugs that's ever been prescribed.
Right, in our opinion.
No, like demonstrably.
I just did that for the algorithm. Yep, no, it's fine.
It's so
right.
Trying ivermectin should not have been a big deal.
Yeah, the least it's gonna do is just kill all the bugs in your colon.
You know what I thought after I looked into that,
yeah.
and I spoke with my doctor, and I spoke with a nurse practitioner who that's not a doctor, but that's a prescriber. I came away with the impression that it seemed like it was a possibility that they just didn't want the emergency use authorization. Also, that the follow the money. I followed the money, and I lost all confidence. Once I followed the money, I lost confidence in taking things as face value from the powers that be, and I went that direction. That's non-institutionalized thinking. Now, at the same time, there were people who wanted to say, "Oh yeah, you're my brother," because I was anti this or anti that, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
You just wanted information to make an informed decision.
I was just trying to, and I could have been wrong at the cost of my own life the entire time.
Or perhaps the life of others,
And the next pandemic that comes around, maybe the federal government and all those guys that stand up in front of the TV will be saying exactly what we need to do, and I'll need to follow, and I need to come into it open-minded again.
Right.
Even though I did lose confidence in them through the COVID experience, I might need to take just as seriously next time the things they say.
It's funny. I really am hearing and agree with your perspective on this. I am empathetic towards what a difficult situation it would have been to be a health advisor during that time, because I think in the beginning there was a huge question whether or not this would be an absolute, totally destructive killing flu in which people are dying in their houses, and it's full on Armageddon.
And people did die.
Yeah, and it's absolutely
people
savage.
Were
and
dying.
It's really sad.
Yeah,
I think that taking care to get information and being careful and kind of leaning in such a way that you're going to take care of other people and yourself, that was really smart and wise.
But I didn't understand in the beginning. As soon as I knew there was a killing flu coming out, I knew two things that I needed to focus on.
Yeah.
I needed to focus on getting in the sun, make sure vitamin D, these are the things that really work.
Yeah.
Sun, vitamin D, and exercise.
Yeah, absolutely.
These are things, and I didn't understand why those weren't, and diet. Good diet, good nutrition, good exercise, plenty of sun, vitamin D. And then the whole, whether it could be spread outdoors, a respiratory virus doesn't tend to spread in outdoor conditions. Yeah. That's a long known, almost fact.
Right.
That you've got to work pretty hard to catch a flu outdoors.
Yeah.
That's why winter times when people are indoors, the flu spreads so much. This is always, I've known this since I was young.
Right.
And so and then the risk to children, we knew immediately that children were not at risk.
Praise God.
I was so happy about that.
Me too, dude.
You don't want kids to be, and the elderly were at high risk, and they're actually at low risk from vaccine adverse effects in terms of a risk-benefit analysis.
Based on
vaccinate the elderly 100%. Experimental, let's try it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm super down. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I was gung-ho. As soon as I heard they were working on a vax, I'm like, give it to the old people first. Every old person, man, vaccinate those guys.
Right. Yeah.
And I still don't think that the vaccine is very dangerous. Except that I know 5 people who had extremely bad reactions to the vaccine with long-term complications that their doctors said were from the vaccine. And I don't know what to think about that, because that's illegal to say. You'll get kicked out of everywhere if you even point out that stuff, or you get labeled as a this or that. I had family members that were like, they got to you, and like that. And I'm like, that's the opposite of anyone getting to you.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It's funny. So it's interesting that we're talking about COVID in conjunction with institutionalized thinking, because in the beginning I was super pro. Let's keep people safe, man. Heck yeah, I'll stay indoors. This isn't a big deal. You know, I'm not bothered at all. Like, this was not, I didn't feel like it was this big deal because I didn't know what we were doing. I didn't know what it was. So I wanted to gain information. And I had a friend, and dude, from the get-go, from the minute it hit the TV, he was just like, no, this is total bullshit, like 100%. And we really disagreed. We battled about it. It was really good. I really enjoyed.
I'll tell you what I didn't agree with those people on.
Yeah.
Like, I had those people in my life too.
Yeah.
Their process.
That's what I was trying to communicate to this person who I hold just in the highest regard. And it's funny because, so as I was trying to figure out what was going on with COVID, I was also dealing with my own institutionalized thinking. And it's a scary place to be, to feel like, okay, oh geez, I'm going to have to start making decisions for myself based on the information that I'm getting. And then something interesting happened. I went to see a cardiologist, because I have an underlying heart condition that I hadn't had dealt with, and I figured I'm an adult now, I might as well deal with it. So I went to see this guy.
This story hit me at a time. This hit me hard because I was in the middle of trying to figure out what I even thought about all this stuff.
Yeah, he said something so wild to me. It made me sick to my stomach. He said to me, listen, well, first of all, we came in, everybody had to wear a mask. I don't think that, maybe my wife and I had taken ours off or something. Or no, he came in, we all had masks on. He said, have you guys been vaccinated? And we said no. And he said, do you mind if I take my mask off? And then we said yes. So we all took our mask off because that's just where we were at then. And he opened up to us and told us that, he said two things. He said, first of all, he said, everybody in my friend group who's a doctor knows exactly what's going on. This has all been about money from the very beginning. That's what he told us. And he also told us that his board that approves somebody being a cardiologist or not being a cardiologist had told him that if they caught anybody posting on social media anything anti whatever the mainstream idea was, that they would lose their cardiology license straight up. They would just take it from them. And it made me so, it was so mind-blowing to me. It was such a dark thing, you know. And it really made me distrust what was going on. It was like 911. I was like, holy shit, this, you know, Mayday, this is not good. Mm-hmm. And I didn't, you know, that was only one person, but I'd heard other narratives that, you know, had matched that. And I tended to believe them. It was so intense, man. How can you even... Now, if you were to steel man the argument, you know, you remember when you couldn't find toilet paper, or you went to the store and like, you couldn't
I watched
get
that happen. I watched that happen.
I remember going to the store and being like, this is insane, dude. Like,
insane.
I just need something to wipe my butt with. Is there really none to be had? And trying to find antiseptic wipes and things, and you're kind of on these missions. And I was like, wow, there is an argument to be made, and perhaps more valid than we think, that if the government, or if the people in charge, had given the people the information that they had and allowed them to make their own decisions like adults, most people would not have acted like adults, because we've been spoon-fed for so long. You know, you just turn on the TV and do whatever it says, you know, and they're always playing
that kind of thinking.
And,
like we talk about skateboarding most of the time, and one of the problems that we've seen, and one reason we started the podcast, was because skateboarders just read Thrasher and just do what it says, or the kids watch Revive and they just do what they say. And I don't think that. I think that's exactly what Thrasher wants.
Yeah,
I think it's exactly what Revive wants as well, or Braille. Although
at least they're playing on it.
I tend to wonder. I tend to hope better.
Sure.
I've always hoped that the editorial board of Thrasher would have wanted something different. That instead of being the voice, that they would want to be a voice.
Sure.
But that's not true. In skateboarding, they want to say it and then have you do it, and that's suspect.
Right.
I refuse these arguments from force, just like forcing you. F the rest, ride the best, you know, and then you say, well, I make skateboard wood and it's better than the factory stuff, and kill him, you know, like, you know, and I'm like, it seems like there's so many double standards. And when you see a double standard, or when you follow the money, so the money was on promoting alcohol abuse, drug use, pills, heroin. When you see that's what's going on, and then They go, no, they say, oh, we're having trouble stopping that because that's where the money is.
Yeah.
You can know that I don't need to admire these brands. I don't need to respect I don't respect that. In a culture like, it's not just in my area of the country. Many areas of the country have people who demand to be respected without behaving in a way that earns that. I won't rely on someone to tell me what I want. Like when I go to a skate shop and I say, oh, I want a pair of Indy 169s, and they go, you don't want that.
Really?
Yeah,
is that why I asked for them?
I can't. Well, and that was a spicy conversation. I mean, people were like, "Whoa, man, don't! Oh, wow, you know."
Yeah,
and
those
I'm
guys
like,
are
or I'll lose what?
Yeah,
what will I lose?
Right.
Well, this kind of thinking is not a great way forward. Now, if you're not an institutional thinker, then you're going to wind up having to admit that your position will have to grow. I mean, you're going to have to learn and grow, which is going to humble you.
Right.
And the comfort of knowing that you're in a group, you'll lose it.
Yeah.
You're going to lose group memberships in your life.
Right.
You know, when you're in a friend group and your friends all start getting addicted to drugs and falling off, and you get a couple of dead friends, and you start to realize, like, oh, I can't not do that stuff and be one of the guys. But being one of the guys was like what you came up on, and everything you learned. Nobody maybe said it to you, but you learned loyalty to a group, and the group is on a path of self-destruction. I mean, someone somewhere is. I mean, people don't do it. They follow it all the way to the end. They say, well, if I can't fit in this group, I'll die trying. And then many of them do. Yeah. And it's that group think, that tribal identification. Right. And we've seen it in skateboarding so much. Right. We've seen it so much. It's not that we mind gatekeeping so much. It's not gatekeeping that bothers us. It's the institutional mindset of doing what you're told. Excuse me?
Right. Isn't this anti-everything that skateboarding stands for?
We're riding skateboards, doing what I'm told on a skateboard, and you've got people who pretend it's their own idea. Yeah. They pretend that their battle is for a sense of satisfaction, but follow the money. Yeah. There's too much sponsorship on the line, too much high fives and bro hugs on the line, too many after parties on the line. Now, the vast majority of skateboarding culture is highly conformist. It's extremely group thinky. Right. And I reject that. Always have, probably always will. Yeah. And at a high cost. Right. No, it's not. Well, it's a low cost. I get the benefit of being the person that I wind up being by the time I breathe my last breath. I don't know who that'll be. Yeah, I mean, and it's not even being on a team, being in a group. I love that crap, dude. We all do. I love that crap. We actually need it. If I'm with my boys, we can be doing whatever. I was in a conversation with one of my superiors at work, and I told him, I said, listen, I don't care what we're doing. I love people, and I love being in a group. I mean, we could be picking up gravel from the parking lot, and I'd be happy as long as I'm with the boys and everybody's down and we're doing it together. Wouldn't hurt to be being paid a nice wage. Well, yeah, that would be nice too, 100%. So I understand what's going on, but we can't. I think it's a bad move to sacrifice integrity of thought and action, for the sake of being on the team. And it's really difficult to not do that. It really is. The cost is relatively high. I still hold that to be true. But I think that your question that you asked, or you said, I want to, whoever the person I'm going to be when I breathe my last. And I think it's good for us to ask ourselves, okay, well, what kind of legacy do I want to have left? Or what do I want to die a person who had integrity or not? Well, we're at the end of our episode. Yeah. We're approaching it, and I want to kind of summarize some of this. We've wandered around in the middle. We talked about the pandemic. We talked about the Constitution. Yeah. And we talked about some of the legislation and some of the current events, tragic current events that are going on. And there's a lot of pressure on people to select from a limited menu. Yeah. And what would please me isn't that we're not going to immediately choose the right thing. We're going to have to understand that the menu is broader.
Yeah.
With more options than we may have appreciated.
Yeah.
And it's very humbling to see a much more vast space to move in.
Yeah.
It might make us feel small.
Yeah.
To be saddled with the responsibility to actually build a response out of information and the process of evaluation.
Right.
But I would like to challenge the skateboarders who listen to us to do this with the ads you read.
Yeah.
When you open Thrasher magazine or go on a website and you see an ad for something, ask yourself this: what is the reason I should buy this product? What are they telling me is the reason? If it's because it's a cool color, then that's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool
if it's
colors are
because
cool.
they say it's stronger or lighter or,
Yeah.
like that, those
Sure.
are great. But some of those reasons are a little more sinister. It's about being part of something that is going to let you down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so check and see if someone's picking your pocket
Right.
next time you swallow something hook, line, and sinker, because just about every perspective that Jake Phelps shared, his legacy, it's not a great one. Jeff Grosso, a little bit more sunny.
Sure.
Jeff Grosso was very quick to admit that he was ridiculous.
Yeah, that's super
As
helpful.
he said things like, if you don't do it this way, don't do it at all.
Yeah, right.
I'm an idiot.
Yeah,
It
right.
was so
Yeah.
good.
That was so down.
He
dude.
was not an institutional thinker. He represented institution
Yeah.
without being a dogmatic institutional thinker.
Yeah.
And that was so precious. But he not quite enough for my taste.
Sure.
We started a podcast.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, we're here.
Right. It's fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that thus ends another episode of us bullying children because they can't kickflip.
And that, friends, is just so we're clear, is based solely upon the fact that we can't kick.
That's right. And if I land any kickflips this year, all of those children are immediately, I owe them all a Coke.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're going to have to start handing out Coke like crazy.
Jinx on me. All right. Gentle friends, thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of that ridiculous phenomenon, which is, yes, the CapmLew podcast. For what it's worth,
this is on you.
It really is.
This is really
We're
on you.
finishing up on the Facebook first. Later video, friends.